All right. Well, the title, of course, of our CEU is Furniture Fashion, Unconventional Materials in Luxury Furnishings. And the thing that really comes to mind for me when we're talking about luxury are two concepts: high quality authenticity and the element of something being unique, rare, or special. So this CEU is going to cover four different points. We're going to explore home fashion design by expanding material exploration beyond wood and upholstery, which most of us are familiar with. We're going to understand the mechanics and techniques of these categories of unconventional luxury materials and furniture fashion, specifically from natural resources. We're going to define the quality of these attributes so you can understand the high-low pricing of the industry, and then provide care and product usage direction as well, so you know when best to use these in your different projects. So home fashion goes beyond wood and upholstery, and luxurious interiors specifically are always exploring materials, form, and shape. The benefit of having the small world that we live in is we have access to a global skill set. And that skill set is something that makes these unconventional materials extremely rare and special. And that's something that makes, our interior design industry so incredible to be a part of, because the industry's craving whatever is next and new. So furniture trends in the future, they're shifting the way that we live and work, right? Sustainability comes up often. How can we have a sustainable way of living through our home? And that's why we've seen such an interest in vintage and antique furniture coming back, because people are interested in purchasing high-level luxury goods once and or inheriting them from someone else because of that. Of course, one of the goals is always to connect the indoors and the outdoors together, especially with your interior designers. So we're going to start with the first natural material that is right outside our window: plants. Now, of course, texture. A range of qualities exist in plants, right? Sustainable plants and grasses, of course, have made their way into our homes now. So we're going to start with the power of rattan. Rattan really blurs the indoors and outdoors, and it is misunderstood in many ways. So the first thing I will say is many times people hear the word rattan and assume we're talking about outdoor furniture. That is not the case in every situation, and certainly not the case in luxury interiors, particularly with us at Meguiar. It is indoor only. But of course, that's because it's elevated in design, elevated in finish options. And in order to gain a full understanding, we're going to be very discerning through this presentation so that you can understand what you're purchasing and specifying for your projects. So rattan itself is a solid pole. You can see on the table here, it's fully solid. It is more like our bones, where it has that cellulose quality. And that's why when you steam bend it, it will allow and hold its shape. It is based out of Southeast Asia, and the wider the pole in diameter, the older the plant. Of course, creating these forms and curves with rattan is what makes it so spectacular, and once it dries, it holds its shape. The strength of rattan is completely undervalued because the durability, it's never going to break, splinter, or chip. So that's, again, why it's sustainable. You're purchasing a piece made out of rattan, and it's going to hold its shape and durability as well, because those shapes are not going to move. Of course, steaming it in a mold and getting these beautiful forms, all of these poles of rattan you can hone, meaning, of course, sand them down to get the diameter that you're after in case you wanted to do a pair of different chairs here. Of course, we've got this counter stool right in front of us, beautiful with the double layer of rattan poles. And getting that consistency is really important. So one thing you'll notice with our rattan, especially in our Meguiar showroom, is we're using peeled rattan, where we're taking the outer layer of the plant off completely. You can imagine the outside layer of the plant has a water resistance situation, is defending itself, as you can see here. In this next, I won't get ahead of myself. You'll see the natural plant. It's really intriguing how it's got a spiky quality to it. So the interior of the plant is really what's going to take the finish, which of course are our selection options in the world of luxury furnitures. The durability makes rattan perfect for dining chairs. And I think what else is spectacular with dining chairs is the use of negative space without fabric, use of pattern without fabric. Look at how these rattan shapes can completely define something. And the beauty of dining chairs, counters, and bar stools is they're tucked in. So you're looking at the back half the time anyway. And that's the power of how rattan being a sustainable piece, but also able to be adjusted with our designing, steam bending, and holding those forms. Really spectacular. And day-to-day use comes up a lot. Well, I'm worried, it's lightweight. Is that going to be a problem for durability? The opposite is true. The beauty of a dining chair being lightweight is something I'm sure we've all experienced in our projects, where you move a dining chair out or you want to put a rug underneath and it's too heavy for the end consumer to use. Rattan is perfect for that. Now, in this case, of course, we're seeing a heavy white paint, which is any of our rattan pieces, or any rattan pieces, can always be painted, but only the most luxurious are able to be stained, and you'll be able to see that grain there. But it's the same finish. I mean, this is an extremely elegant dining room. Range of paints, same way you need to take care of that. Just make sure that, wipe it down on occasion and whatnot. Of course, indoor use only, as I mentioned earlier. So here's that image I was talking about. That's actual rattan in nature. That spiky quality, again, from the palm family. It's the fast growing and grows hundreds of meters long. And that's what makes it, of course, sustainable, because it replenishes itself so quickly. And 70% of the world's rattan comes from Indonesia, which is where our Maguire plant is. So craftspeople coat, glue, screw, and dowel all joints for maximum stability. And I want to talk about the coping step. That's what you're seeing here. We have these chairs actually in person, and you can almost see the cellulose quality. See all these little dots throughout the rattan? That's what I mean by it's more like our bones. It's not hollow. It's a solid pole that has that cellulose quality. The coping is when we're taking these C shapes that are kind of half moon and forcing them together, or making them flush, if you will. That's what we're doing, is removing part of the rattan to have them combine with one another. And again, beautifully lightweight, durable, long-lasting. We're getting to see the beauty of rattan in a luxury marketplace also hold that sustainable story. So what do we need to pay attention to? What's the difference between non-luxury rattan, or how are some cues that you can pick up on to specify in your projects? Number one, it comes down to the design. Study the design intently. How are they interweaving the poles? Is it a single pole, or is it a double pole? How thick are they, and how long are the individual pieces? Is there coping where they're merging into one another? All that craft story is extremely important. Then, of course, looking at the corners, are they doweled? Are they bound? Are they wrapped in a strong rawhide? And of course, the design will always pay off, because that's where the inherent value is, time after time and year after year. So the other great thing about rattan, we know we can create these amazing shapes and forms, is we can also stretch things across them. We already talked about negative space just with the pole. Here we're using a rawhide woven element to create more like a skin. So again, you're getting this texture within the room automatically, and we'll talk more about rawhide in a minute. But here's just the pole itself, where we are taking that and shaving off one side so it looks completely in this case, of course. This is called planed or flattened rattan. And notice the grain. People don't understand that rattan has this grain quality to it. So what's great about it is you're showing the authenticity. Remember, going back to what is luxury, authenticity, something special. And then in this day and age, something sustainable also tends to come up. You get a chance to know and explain that's true rattan that only specific luxury craftspeople are able to put together in that manner. The breadth of the rattan forms allow any designer to have a piece of art within the interior. So remember, this whole point of the CEU is to think outside of wood, outside of upholstery, which of course we love. But how do we add a little bit of layer there? Notice, of course, here we've got two rattan poles merging into one another. Beautiful bindings, double doweling, the beautiful knot detail along the back. This is where you notice the inherent luxury story in some of these unconventional materials. But there's function too. I mean, bar and counter stools. One of the greatest features we need is lightweight, something that can come in and out. And that's where rattan is going to be a superstar and outmatch everybody. And just backstory history-wise, Maguire started in luxury commercial spaces, so Four Seasons hotels in dining rooms and Ritz-Carltons. Because imagine you have a wedding banquet and you need to move hundreds of chairs quickly. Rattan pieces can honestly tumble off one another and hold their shape because of that durability. Again, they don't splinter, break, or chip. So there's a lot of durability with this as well. Pretty spectacular. One thing to note, when you sit in rattan pieces and they make a sound, they're actually adjusting and bending with you. So you will have that actual audible situation on occasion. And that's not It's not breaking down. It's not an audible problem. The plant itself with the rawhide bindings is adjusting to the gravity. And that, of course, means it'll last a very long time. It's bending instead of breaking. Of course, finishes, very important for you. What selections do I have? Any finish you would like to bring a luxury marketplace, we can color match. I know I've seen a lot of counter and bar stools matching maybe a lower kitchen cabinet. So it's the same color, it kind of blends in. Sometimes it's alternative to maybe a beautiful fabric over a balance in the kitchen window. You get a chance to see the great could do black patent. And that's where rattan is really spectacular as well. Of course, you want to look for hand-stained finishes that are water-soluble dyes and low VOC, of course, better for the environment as well. But I just think it's really intriguing to go from the very matte finish to the very high sheen finish on a plant. It's kind of interesting when you expand it. Look at the power of that. Look at the power of the selection of sheen and how beautiful they can be. So there's three processes to get this color on the rattan. The first is a glaze, where you're, again, wanting to see the grain. So it's just the glaze of color going on top of that. Next is a top coat that has a UV inhibitor, just from sunshine coming through the home. And then finally, a clear varnish in order to protect any delicate finishes. And on the right here, we've got our butterfly chair done in silver and gold leafing. So when you look at this, you might assume this is kind of a spray paint or something metal, just paintbrushed on. And it is the old school way of doing it, where you are taking little squares of silver leafing, placing them on the rattan, in this case, of course, only on a single ring on the back of a dining chair, brushing it off, then doing it again, brushing it off. It's a 12-step process to get silver leafing on any of our pieces. So this is where luxury rattan really explodes, not only in terms of value and worth investing in, but it also allows it to be a piece of art that the family that you're specifying for will want to keep that long term. The leaves, of course, are then brushed off one at a time, and then we get that top coat to achieve the beautiful shine with it. Finishing up with rattan, I mean, just the pop art, repetition, there's such a modern quality with it. It's really such a spectacular way to have beautiful, luxury, casual living and casual luxury. So moving on to pole, are there any questions on rattan as a pole? Okay, so then you're like, what do you mean a pole versus what else you can do with it? This is made of rattan, but they've taken that pole and stripped it into small, skinny strips. And then we are able to do weaving throughout the entire process. So the longevity of the peacock chair, I mean, this is timeless luxury, just known and centuries old. The power of this, talk about Girl Boss this morning. I absolutely loved it. I'm like, yes, I've got that slide. Because it really is spectacular how they're woven. But that goes to the craft story. That is where the power is and where the beauty is of these pieces. I love this underneath one of our ottomans because we're showing you how something we never see, only our pets are ever going to have this view, is still beautifully done. You're weaving the rattan peel in order to have this durability story, attaching these narrow rattan to the wider ones. And it's so sad that no one ever sees it. I just thought this was the slide we had to put in. Lucky dog and lucky cat. So in order to create caning, you have to actually get it wet, not like the seam bending of the full pole. When you cane something, it's all wet, then it's woven around, and then, of course, as it dries, you get this expansive tension, which is what is the power of the peacock chair, and of course, we're seeing in this stool here as well. And then, of course, it becomes completely dry and maintains its shape. And the interesting thing about plants in our world is they've been used for shelters for centuries, obviously. The first thing we do, we imagine around the world of Survivor, is what large plants and bendable plants going to do to create a shelter. They've been used in ancient cultures in this way for function forever. And one of my favorite interpretations is we recently had Laura Carrar take this structure and be inspired, flip it upside down. So notice the round shape here underneath the chair. This is a bar stool and counter stool series as well. Made of rattan, where you get that dome quality to it, and then taking that rattan caning as well. Now, this is a pattern a lot of us see all over the place, and I bet you we didn't know what it was. How many of us like, I don't know, is that wood or grass? I'm not sure. That's okay. That's why we're here and trying to, think about it. In the luxury world, this is, of course, rattan strips. Really beautiful in that way. The inspiring design and how we're seeing these unconventional materials used today is spectacular. So again, obviously the motif of the cherry blossom is what the artist wanted to highlight, but the rattan caning offsets that dimension in such a spectacular way. And it doesn't only have to be in traditional marketplaces. Look at this. Look at the rattan caning on the back of these beautiful chairs, on the cocktail table. It's really spectacular and modern, well beyond, I think, what some of our end users may be expecting. And that is where your expertise in terms of luxury markets and investment really will pay off. Any questions on rattan before we move to bamboo? Are we learning something? Are we having a good time? Good. Okay, good. Bamboo. Most of the time when people walk into our show, they're like, oh, bamboo. I'm like, here's all rattan. But we do have some bamboo. So, and it's not to undermine any information. It's just we didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. Bamboo in its natural form when it's alive, obviously, is green, and it's known for its distinctive nodes every couple of inches. In the chair, you'll notice it's inconsistent with the finish because you can't finish rattan or bamboo. The outside of bamboo has such that heavy, waxy coloring. You can't strip it the same way you can rattan because it's hot. So you would lose the entire pulp. So bamboo is typically shown in a natural colorway. The only finish it would take would be something opaque, like a paint or a white gloss or a black or something like that. But just spectacular when you look at this, and when you see something bound together, of course, around, in this case, a metal frame in order to have a dining table offsetted by the beautiful rawhide details. Again, notice the coloration of the bamboo can't be changed. One of nature's treasures, and to be expected that way. Grasses. Let's make sure I'm on the right page here. So a touch of texture goes a long way. Here we have, this is made of Lampa Canai, so is this console. We'll see several other options there, but grasses add a little bit of flexibility in unconventional material in a luxury space, and a great consideration because people are always saying, where can I get texture? You're looking for texture in your fabrics, you're looking for texture in your wallpapers. Don't offset that the furniture itself can have some of that. Here we're harvesting, drying, and then you finally braid and weave these grasses. And these plant fibers can be materials like abaca, cotton, flax, hemp, jute, sisal. And they come from seed hairs, stem or bast fibers, leaf fibers, and husk fibers. That's where the grasses are coming from. It's not just like our lawns where we let them go and you'll be able to do it. Someone is stripping this. So again, think of our craft story. Someone has to harvest the grasses, and then we're weaving the grasses into something, and then finally it lands on the furniture. Spectacular texture with this Hoku series. This is again called Lampa Canai, is the name of this particular grass. Lampa Canai comes from the Philippines. So we're again highlighting where it comes from with the craft story of where it comes from, honoring the time-honored traditions there. Of course, one of my favorite notes here on the side, this is inspired by the espadrille wedge sample. Beautiful detail because you can take these grasses and weave them into multiple different shapes. Abaca grass. So the first one was Lampa Canai. I heard someone asking, Lampa Canai. Yeah, no problem. If there's any questions anytime, interrupt. Abaca grass. So abaca, familiar with, typically, according to Encyclopedia Britannica, abaca fiber, unlike most other leaf fibers, is obtained from the plant leaf stalk, which means they average 1 to 3 meters. So that's actually quite long. And when you think about that, that is how the weaving is processed. So that's why abaca is known for being so durable, right? You imagine you've got 1 foot different longs of grasses, weaving that together. When you have 1 to 3 meters long, that strength is inherent in the craft story itself. So abaca being obviously valued for its exceptional strength, flexibility, buoyancy, and resistance to damage in salt water, although this is still an indoor piece of furniture. So just double check all that. With luxury furnishings, you do need to make sure that you are indoors for the most part. But of course, it's exceptionally suited for marine cordage. And one thing to note with abaca, you're going to have textural strands. As you feel something and you've got a little bit of a loose hair, a lot of someone's like, oh, it's defective, something's breaking apart. It's just happens to be one of the ends of that 1 to 3 meter mark, where it just might lightly be showing there. Those, of course, can lightly be, cut off if it bothers somebody. But that's why it's different from wooden upholstery. You want to see these qualities that are happening. Here's a little bit more of a modern interpretation. How to use abaca grass. Beautiful on the back of this Tom Pheasant slipper chair. Just a slight touch. I mean, I can definitely imagine this in your coastal area, upstate a bit. Moving on to Danish cord. So Danish cord brought to the forefront by Hans Wegner in the mid-1920s. Of course, mid-century furniture design coming from Denmark, we're expecting. And these furniture designers, familiar with their names, Bjorg Morgensen, Finn Juhl, N.O. Moller, and many, many more. And these iconic designs, such as Wegner's CH24 wishbone chair or Neil Otto Moller's chair, use Danish cord to this day. So how did we go from grasses to Danish cord, and what is Danish cord? During the Second World War, rattan and all these grasses became scarce. They weren't able to be used. So all of a sudden in Europe, they needed another way to make furniture. Enter Danish cord, which is 3-ply paper wrapped around a wire filament. That's what Danish cord is. 3-ply paper wrapped around wire. So that's where you get this tension. When you think about Danish cord, it's not flexible like the woven grasses are that are braided and, woven in a different way. It is wire in the center there. One thing you want to look for and pay attention to is it will soften and patina over time, as you can imagine, paper. Obviously, in this case, we've got a little bit of a light finish to it on top of that, and you do want to see a good quality Danish cord have a wax top coat as well, just to prevent stains and whatnot. But in a natural colorway, or even here in the black, you're going to see some of that patina long term, and that's really what makes something extremely special. Usually that works in mid-century furniture design, as you can imagine, like you're expecting a little bit of that worn look, and that's what's really spectacular about this particular chair. There we go. So this one is a drawing again from one of our guest designers. And what I love about when you think about unconventional materials and a guest designer drawing a piece of furniture, it's like they've opened their Crayola box from black and white to any color possible. So this particular one, the artist was able to imagine it in Danish cord, and it's like swirls of silk. But each of these cords is wrapped one at a time. There's no way to do a band of 10 Danish cords. It's all one at a time. So when you think about that craft story, that's where you get the tension of the series. Of course, this is called the Bound series. Same rattan cooked into one another, same shape of rattan. So we're kind of now paralleling all of our previous conversations, but Danish cord is what makes it the star and really tell that luxury story. Yes. All of it, all the braiding, the weaving, all the rattan, steam banding, everything we've seen so far is done by hand. From centuries old and a global skill set. That's why I think this is such an interesting conversation, because we kind of get, we walk through showrooms and you would walk past all these pieces. We'll get to all of them eventually, but you wouldn't stop for a minute and be like, okay, let me understand this. The 2 rattan shapes, the rawhide we're going to get to, the double doweling story, the durability story, the grain story, the options of the finish, all done by hand. It's pretty spectacular, I think. Yay, thank you. I have a fan. Right, thank you. I don't know that one. I know this one is a full day, and we have one that takes 3 people 2 full days in our showroom. I encourage you to come and see. It's spectacular. But imagine, this must take I'd say at least 2 days or a day and a half, because there's so much going on with the tension. Well, I know, I'm sure there are many other people that do that. Maguire's is in Indonesia, yes. So yeah, pretty cool. Great questions. Keep them coming, everybody. Appreciate it. All right, now we've put together our plants. We've let them go. We're moving on to stone. Both granite and marble, of course, naturally found stone materials that are quarried directly from the earth. And that's something I want us to sit with for a minute. Stone comes from only the earth. So are we growing our stones somewhere? Like we can grow grasses? I don't think so. Once in a while, I have to like reality check myself. Like my kitchen counter is the only one of its kind in the world. And that's kind of what we're going to explore. One of a kind treasures, often forgotten. They're from nature. And the rarer the slab, the higher the price. But it's intriguing because a lot of times our end user, and this is my sister, so I can say this, she wanted marble countertops. She's like, I just white. I just don't want it. Just white. I'm like, okay. You can't get that anymore. That's true marble because the best of the whitest of the white, that was seen as the best at one point. But the other side of stone is the more rare, the really unique colorations, extreme colorations that you can get out of fabric, you also can find in stone. So higher quality marble that have less grains or extremely rare, extra colorful stones tend to be the ones that are most expensive. So this is my only slide with words on it because it's that important. We're going to read it. There's two kinds of stone: siliceous stone, which is sedentary, composed mainly of silica, quartz-like particles. It tends to be very durable and easy to clean. These tend to be things like slate and sandstone. The second kind is calcareous stone, which is made up of calcium carbonate. It's sensitive to acids, including cleaning products and foods, citrus fruits, vinegars, wine, tomatoes, etc. And that includes marble, travertine, limestone, and onyx. So right away, this is the conversation about what is in my cleaning, how am I cleaning my stone, and making sure we've got the right material for those different pieces, because you don't want to damage something that's only made once, only made for you. So we're going to start with marble. Carrara marble, of course, is the type of marble that many people speak about and are familiar with. These days it has blue-gray staining running through it. Originally, though, it was popular for sculpture and building decor in Italy. And it's been quarried since the Roman times in the city of Carrara. So if you didn't know this, that was another learning for me. The name of the stone is often the wear of the stone, which is kind of an interesting take. Happens to be the northernmost tip of Tuscany, Italy. And marble has been extracted from over 650 quarries just in Carrara. 650 quarries. Apparently, you can see this from space, someone told me, which I thought was really intriguing. And the very pure white, they call it statuario because that was the original use for Carrara marble. It has a very high tensile strength where you can get into that detail, which of course the artists that we go see, the statue of David, if you've been lucky enough to go, that's what they were after. And of course, it takes a nice high gloss polish as well and holds those details. But let's talk about it in furniture. So by the late 20th century, Carrara marble, the highest grade, has run out. And the considerable ongoing production of stone has even more bit of a grayish tint, much to my sister's dismay. But at least we know that's what's out there in the marketplace. But it's still extremely attractive and used in furniture throughout. So let's talk for a minute about polished stone versus honed stone. Now, polished marble, extremely smooth surface, lets the light give that reflective sheen, where honed marble has a dull finish and it actually absorbs the light. If you look at this table, it seems like it's glowing because it's absorbing the light in that fashion. So, popular cleaners, not to be used on marble. Bleach, ammonia, citrus, vinegar, hydrogen peroxide will damage your marble. Please do not use those. Good news is hot water and a rag is absolutely fine, and maybe every once in a while a marble cleaner. Of course, you could talk to a stone specialist for that as well. Next up, we've got Arabiscato marble, sourced in Italy from Arabiscato. More veining and colorations. I mean, look at the variants here. And this is what I find fascinating about stone. I think this has got just so much more going on, so much personality. Very intriguing. What's hard to get our end users to understand is what theirs is going to look like is not this one. This is the picture on our website. This one exists. Theirs doesn't exist yet. We haven't built it. These happen to be made to order, this particular table. So it's something that we'll kind of, again, keep talking about. But in terms of marble in general, it is softer and more porous than granite. So that's why I'm sure in kitchen counterland, you kind of heard that over the reindeer, like, stop doing the marble thing, kitchen countertops. They did that just because of the a little bit more high maintenance needed. And then you want to also notice if there's any sort of sealant. It's important to understand. In furniture pieces, typically there's not a sealant because we're not in the same vein as a kitchen counter where you're making a lot of things and you may have your vinegar dressing accidentally spill out onto the countertop there. But as strong as stones are, you do want to just notice the care that you may need to do. Just beautiful with these different pieces and how spectacular just white and gray can be in Arabescato marble. Of course, there's multiple colorations in marble. This is Elegante Firefly marble. This is all caused by different mineral inclusions incorporated into the crystal structure of the stone. So you have colors and colorations within different marbles due to minerals. Iron oxide causes yellow and brown deposits. Feldspar creates pink and red deposits. There's gold, pink, blue marbles on the marketplace, and it all is a science experiment that is baked in the earth for billions of years. I mean, when you think about that, it's pretty spectacular. I think we take for granted stone, like, well, I don't think that's slab. It's like, yes, but that's like it's built after millions and millions of years. So the appreciation is intriguing, especially when it comes to luxury furnishings. Lena Gray marble, we've got on display right in front of us here. Beautiful, beautiful interpretation. This was actually once limestone and under intense heat and pressure changed to become marble. So that heat alters the crystalline structure, and then of course you can introduce other materials and minerals, which is where the veining comes from. And you've got the high lows, of course, in this case, in a nice neutral color palette, which is really beautiful. The pair of cocktail tables here kind of completes my story about understanding stone pieces, especially in the luxury marketplace. That authenticity is what we're after, right? That's what makes it luxury. So the authenticity part is no two are ever going to be alike. So when you have a pair, and I've had actual customers say, well, one's got a lot of markings and one doesn't, and they don't match. It's impossible to create this in a different way. So I recommend always to designers, if you love what you see in the showroom, let the showroom buy a new one and you take that one because there is no other one like it. And the other thing I also recommend is your little sample of stone. I can 100% guarantee you that is not the stone that your table is going to be made out of. 100%. Because that slab is what we made samples. So I'm guaranteeing you this is not it. But sure, take it for a beautiful morning. Enjoy it, tell the story, and explain. It's going to be like a holiday morning, like Christmas morning. When we get your cocktail table, we don't know what it's going to look like. I mean, I don't have enough surprises in our life. I really don't. I mean, everyone knows if they have a baby, they know what's coming their way. I mean, what real surprises do we have? I think stone is one where we need to forgive ourselves ahead of time. Forgive ourselves that we don't know what it's going to look like, but there isn't another one like it. And that's what's going to make this table so spectacular. Just my little self there. Okay, so most of these stones, of course, through these complex reactions in the earth that take millions of years, help achieve. You just can't get this look, the natural stone, from man-made material. It's very, very different. The range, of course, of these beautiful materials are influenced by the design. We've got almost carvings on the side here, indicative of cave etchings. So it's really fun to see how the luxury marketplace for furniture and stone has explored. This, of course, is our Toronto marble, both warm and cool tones. Let's move on to granite. Crystalline structure, it makes it more resistant to abrasion, staining, and discoloration. It's one of the strongest stones that is used in architecture and in furniture. So granite is actually an igneous rock, which was once molten. So I've actually been to Iceland during a live volcano. I've seen the lava flowing down. I picked up a piece and it's got a lot of air holes in it as it cools down. And then you see the denseness of what granite actually is by the time it's furniture. There's that millions of years kind of clicking in again. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is limited. This is special. We don't think about it that way. But any of these mineral markings, so this is a classic example. I can picture someone being very disappointed that the minerals just interrupted at that exact moment. Or right down here, I mean, these types of inclusions are considered normal. So if this is not what they want, like my sister, you got to go to a man-made place, which drops down your luxury story, but that's not the end of the world. Again, you will need to specify what's right for your customers. I love this detail here. Charcoal color variations. Granite is typically, speckled, model. There's a lot happening with all those different minerals there. Quartz, feldspar, mica, and so much more to get all these different elements. Now, quartz. So that comes up a lot. Quartz countertops. That's another thing. And if you don't know, most quartz countertops are all quartz, technically, is man influenced. So they're taking the stone that's been, I'll say, baked in the earth, grinding it up into a powder and rolling it out with resin and other composites to make it crystal white, right? That's what ends up happening. Quartzite is the actual stone from the earth. We've got several pieces in our showroom to kind of get you to explore the colorations available. Quartzite, extremely luxury. Quartzite is very rarely used. And that's why we're so lucky to have these large pieces, thick tops, beautiful, beautiful colorations. The opposite. Quartz is when you add the resins. Quartzite is the natural material. I can speak. I mean, quartzite would be like one of our onyxes, so it's specialty stone, but it's not. Yeah, durability should be fine. I mean, once it delivers, aside from taking a hammer to it, which I don't recommend, it should be fine. But quartzite or quartz itself, it's man-made, that has the different resin components in there. I don't have full detail on because I don't do kitchen countertops, but I know that's typically what it's used for. But they're usually, pretty durable. I mean, that's the thing with stone. It's heat resistant because it's been baked already. It's extremely strong. You can't really break it unless you take a hammer to it. I think the biggest challenge we have in luxury is the inclusions. People misunderstand the inclusions all the time and they don't like something. It's like, well, I don't like that I have them right here. I don't like that I'm only 5'4", but I'm nature, and that's kind of what happens. So sometimes we got to forgive ourselves a little bit. I mean, this is the natural slab. One of the actual slabs, actually, that is our furniture that's going to be coming right here to Troy. So we have beautiful new pieces that have this onyx material. It's a little bit softer than granite. Granite is the strongest ones. Onyx is a tiny bit softer, but still extremely modern, sophisticated. And there's a crystalline element here. But what's going to be fun is, Anna, as the showroom manager, is going to have one top of the nightstand be cut from up here and one's going to be cut from down here. And it depends. So some of our onyx is transparent. When it's polished, you typically have a little bit of that crystalline look. This we're actually leaving quite matte, so it's almost like a milk. It's really spectacular. Not here yet, but should be here shortly. Excited about this. This is part of our new resort collection. All right, moving on. Look at this movement. This is actually the piece that will be coming. So beautiful to see how framed out nicely. And in this case, we've got a not too heavy. We're putting it on a metal base. A lot of times stone pieces, literally heavy, but also feeling heavy. There's that monolithic quality to it. So we've been playing with that to have, again, that luxury lines that you typically are after, but also the beautiful story here. Travertine, that's come up a lot in recent markets. It is limestone that is deposited by mineral springs. So the fibrous and concentric appearance has this warm cream colored tone and natural raw pores and pitting. This is where water would escape through. This is also misunderstood. So when I pick travertine, I want to see this. That's, again, what is luxury? Authenticity and rare and unique. I want to know that mine has pitting. A lot of times travertine companies will fill it. And that's okay, but to me, that automatically kind of dumbs it down because you don't get a chance to feel the texture of it. And then I get asked a lot, well, what happens if? What happens if the table chips on the end? What happens if the little part, like my 2-year-old picks at it and it breaks? Guess what? No one's going to notice. It's travertine. Look at all of it. Like, it's not damaging the table long term. It has life. It's just a slice of that happened. So I hope this makes sense to everybody. I find it intriguing. I'm probably geeking out up here by myself, but I think it's really neat to think about something we look at every day and appreciate it. Appreciate it for just what it is, like all of us ladies. But how cool is this? Looking at some of these modern interpretations, rounded edges versus squared. Seeing this as a solid piece of travertine telling the story, really, really beautiful. All right, we're moving on. Obviously, I barely scratched the surface with stone, but it is a natural product, very unconventional. And I hope you can see that the quality, reflection, and general strength and care for stone is important. And perfect is not a word I would use. Perfect as it is the only way I would use it to describe stone. They're simply to be accepted as they're presented. And this one's one of my favorites, the opposite of Carrara. That's luxury, rare. rare and spectacular. Beautiful, dark, jet black with just a bit of the white painting. None of those look like mistakes to me. Concrete, this comes up a little bit in outdoor furniture and sometimes indoors. So this is where man's getting involved. I mean, we're taking cement, obviously. We are casting it. For outdoor, you want to make sure that you have a fiber, like a fiberglass woven into that to have it last a really long time, a glass fiber, if you will. One of my favorites is there's artists that are taking plants and pressing it into it so that these are individual. You can notice that obviously they look coordinating, but they're not a matching pair because once the artist uses the single leaf, she has to let it go and then pick a different one. All right, final one. We're almost there, folks. How are we doing on time? Pretty good. Natural materials, animal. The final category. So we're all familiar with leather, but there's also things like feathers and shell. And how do we incorporate these common materials into the luxury marketplace? By the craftspeople behind them. So within these designs is where you really get a chance to see the inherent value and the beauty of this. So we're going to start with leather cord. Obviously, we've got some right in front of us. Here's the star. Gorgeous chair. Again, each of these leather cords are hand woven and connected on the base one at a time. And look at the vibration I have here by touching this piece. Exactly. That's what makes the craft story really special. Each one's individually done. Obviously, if I wanted to press into it, I could damage it. A little bit of a hairdryer will naturally, with any leather, once it's been pressed in, can heat it up and kind of bring it back to recover to its normal state. But just so spectacular to think about how these pieces are created. This is the chair we have in the showroom. Obviously, you see the end table in the Madeira colorway, also available in the oyster. The days that it takes to make these pieces is spectacular. But first thing you got to do is get the cord, right? Cord isn't just like out there. You got to take the leather hide. We have to tan leather, which with an animal skin, you have two choices. You tan it, which makes it pliable and flexible, like we can wear. We put on armchairs, or we can cut that hide, which looks like this, into cord. So that's the first craft story is how do we cut a hide once it's dyed and tanned into cord. Next story is how do we weave it and tell this whole story. Of course, with leather cording, you want to admire the leather cording for its softness. It should have a softness. If it's too coated, it's not going to feel manufactured, and then you're wondering about the authenticity and the luxury story with it. And notice the color variation in the oyster and in the brown. It's going to vary because we're talking multiple hides can be used there as well. This one, look at this. The weaving at the back of this is like a French, the herringbone French braid, all done by hand. This is the one that takes 3 people, 2 full days. If you can see in person, it's spectacular. I'll have to come by and visit us. Really, really great. Lots of time. And then here we're taking leather cord and doing it in a linear pattern on purpose, showing the geometry. We wanted 90 degrees to leave vacant for you to have your fabric pull through. And then, of course, these mitered corners very specifically decided the angle back, specifically wrapping around the corner. Again, these are luxury decisions, right? Every decision, if I wanted to make it easier on myself, I would just have it be like right here and run back, right here and run back. I'm going all the way around the chair. And this sofa has almost a mile of leather cord. Insane. But also, why is luxury? Why spectacular? Of course, when you weave it, nothing tells the story of a craft person getting involved. There's no machine weaving this leather cord. This is what we're doing. Very spectacular. And of course, you get that in a range of color palettes as well. Notice again, color variation. It's not poured into, it's not coming out of a box. Perfect. It's appreciated that someone's hands touched it in such a special way before it got to us. So let's switch to rawhide. So we know leather, we get it. Rawhide is the opposite. I'm not trying to make that soft. I'm not going to make that skin pliable. So as a result, it's extremely stiff. The Crin Barstool is the best in-person example. This is rawhide. Extremely hard. I can't press this. It's more like parchment. If you think of ancient parchments, very, very dense. So no tanning, very stiff. What really makes rawhide beautiful is the expansion that Meguiar brought to the marketplace. Taking that rawhide in small doses, when it is wet, you can secure it to a corner and create an element. It's almost like a piece of jewelry on the chair. That binding then dries when it's 100%, and then you add just another layer of onto that joint. So the durability story increases even more so with the rawhide bindings. Look how beautiful. Now, why are you what you're seeing? It's so fun. Come see our showroom. I mean, the rattan, the rawhide, the beauty of the craft story is what makes these pieces so spectacular. So here it's fun. The designer wanted to have a wider, a little bit of, wrapping here, even in the corners, beautiful details all along in the gondola series. And of course, we've got the Corinne stool right in front of us, where you can almost see through it like parchment. So fringe was really fun. We know leather fringe, which obviously has got a big swing to it, but rawhide's fringe doesn't have that flatness. It is stiff, right? So it's going to hold the dimension of its fringe. It's really intriguing to see the different influences. In this particular case, the artist was inspired by indigenous cultures and wanted to pay homage to that with the beautiful chair here. So back to that concept of a skin-like texture with rawhide. Investigate closely when you see this on something. What actually is it? Is it rattan? Is it rawhide? In this case, it's hard to tell almost from a distance. This is all rawhide, woven when it is wet. And look how beautifully it is tapered in, but then you get a chance to see the upholstery through it. I mean, the Tarrou series is one of the best explorations of rattan and rawhide. But then fashion gets to take over. Let's say your customer is a little bit more traditional, and who doesn't love the Burberry classic weave? We have this chair in our showroom as well. Again, that's rawhide, not leather. So there's a stiffness, and that's where you see this longevity story again and again because of the strength of it. It's at once, delicate, but also beckons you in. You can't help yourself but strum it. And it really is gorgeous to think about upholstery beyond. So another unknown material that comes from animals is crackalore. So I got to read this one because it's all about paint lacquer. So in order to achieve a white surface on ancient paints, there was no pigment to make white, right? We know how to make turmeric color saffron paints. Ancient painters used to create their own pigments. So they would use eggshells. White eggshells is the only way to get that. It's called crackalore, and that's when eggshell lacquer began, breaking them into tiny fragments, organized according to size, and then inlaid in little surfaces with intricate patterns. Well, at Baker McGuire, we took it a little bit larger, and this entire thing is made of crackalore. Luxury, craft story, rare. All of these strips, beautifully done in a little bit of a linear motif. Of course, the base here is beautiful in solid bronze material. You never know walking past that what that is. And that's where, at least in our showroom and showrooms, please take a minute, get a tour. You're going to learn a lot. If our salespeople, have a lot of information here. Of course, seashells is another spectacular one. This is all about the craft story. Mother of pearl. This also could easily be in any Michigan, coastal home. The nacre chest. From our website, it looks like grays and whites up close, emeralds and light rose and mauve. So beautiful. Skin and feathers beyond leather. Eel skin. I don't know if any of you lived through the eel skin fashion of the 80s when the persons demagnetized our credit cards, but I did. And haven't forgotten it since. But when I saw eel skin, I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. We're bringing this to furniture. But yes, we are. Eel, snake of the sea. Very, not like the biggest hide. I know, pick a small animal and cover a piece of furniture in it. But that's what makes it so special. Luxury, rare. The spine, eel is known for its spine detail on the back. Obviously, the patchwork of the materials to keep it consistent, but also have it be completely unique for you. Now you're asking tough questions. I always say it's a joke. Someone's like, well, what if I don't want anything to happen to it? I'm like, you don't touch it. So just forgive yourself. What damage are you going to do? Well, so another thing in general, like furniture, even leather versus fashion leather, both in eels and in any animal, they take in one hide, in purses, they'll take as much as they can and use the underside just like leather. So it's important to, again, know your luxury materials because we haven't had any challenges with the eel skin. It's really spectacular. Absolutely. You all know this, you know the answers to your question too. I mean, this is what's so great is the design. Like designers, they know this. They've been down this road. It's extremely soft. I don't know. Do you have some? Three. There you go. Just so cool. So at least come feel them if nothing else. And I know we got to wrap it up. So I briefly want to talk about shagreen because this is another one. I'm going to leave you with another thinking homework assignment. So in and out of the foreground of home fashion, usually in smaller pieces, we're used to shagreen. It is the skin of stingray when it's natural. But recently, in the past century, we've gone to the faux version as a preference. Right? So now we're talking about this one, and I'm encouraging you to think about this. You are the ones who are going to call the shots on this. You all decided that we don't want real shagreen, we want faux shagreen. This is acceptable. This is considered luxury. Let's see how it's laid out with metal. And that's why I want to leave you with this thought process. These are ever-going natural materials. We're going to run out of them at some point. How are you all responsible for these decisions? I think that's really intriguing. But history-wise, shagreen was sought after for shoes, luggage, and sword hilts in Japan because they're obviously extremely strong and beautiful. Very luxurious, delicate pattern. It was synonymous with class and luxury. And also, it was embraced from Greenland to polished hardwood because it was so abrasive. So that's why shagreen had that really, really intense texture to it. So that controversy, like when is something environmentally acceptable and when is it threatening the species and when do humans care? You know, it's kind of an interesting concept to think about. So I want to leave that with you. Obviously, centuries used, up and down. It's considered a fad piece now, and it's the same with our fashion. No one's wearing fur anymore, but 10 years ago, we were maybe risking it. It's intriguing to think about how fashion is so important in our world as well. But where animals are protected is their feathers. Peacocks lose their feathers every year. We do not have to worry. No one's plucking a peacock. That age 6 is when the peacock feathers are the most spectacular. So, of course, we've chosen them here. And I love how this is captured. Quarter-inch thick acrylic panel, just looking at these tendrils falling naturally, not over-controlling it. Each feather looking absolutely beautiful. When the sunlight hits this, as you're seeing in this, that emerald and indigo color just shine. Really spectacular. All right, we made it, y'all. We did it. CEU is done. Thank you for your time. If there's any questions, I hope we all enjoyed it. Got a few examples here, and please come to our show. We've actually got beautiful setup, and I think you'll see a lot of things in new ways. So wonderful. Thank you so much. Make sure we have your first and last name in the back if you want credit or a certificate emailed to you. Keep it sent. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.